मैंने अभी जस्ट स्टार्ट स्ट्रीमिंग किया है। टिकर मैंने डाला था, मेरे को पता नहीं वो दिख रहा है कि नहीं दिख रहा है। दैट यू हैव टू चेक। जस्ट अभी क्लिक किया है। तो अगर मुझे क्रोम से कुछ करना है तो मुझे बता दो। लाइव हो गया, ठीक है। और टिकर का क्या करेंगे? टिकर दिख रहा है क्या? मैंने उसको लूप मोड में डाला था टिकर ऐड करके। मतलब टिकर को मुझे, मतलब मैंने तो डायरेक्टली फाइल ऐड किया, मुझे फाइल को मूवी की तरह प्ले करना पड़ेगा पीछे, तो मैं वैसे करूँ। Good evening, everyone. So, I'm back. We keep meeting on Mondays, Manic Mondays. I don't know how your Monday has been. Mine has been pretty hectic. So, anyways, let's try to make your Monday evening much better than whatever your day for Monday has been. I told you last time when I gave you an introduction to vocabulary that we are going to try different things. So, today I am going to try what I called last time an etymological approach, which means a lot of words that you see today, I'm going to exactly use the book that I mentioned last time, the book called what do you call it? How to Increase Your Vocabulary by Norman Lewis. Yes, so we're going to use that book. And yeah, because there's a lot of content on the slides, so I don't think you will see me throughout the slides, but between now and next Monday when I see you again, I am going to change a lot in terms of how we deal with vocabulary. So today, I repeat, let's have it in sort of an experimental session, if you want to call it. Let's also see whether you're more comfortable with etymology, because between now and next Monday, obviously, if you are there on my Telegram group, if you're kind enough to put in your comments in the your comments in below the video, we might get an idea whether we should continue with etymology or we should come up with what I said. My preferred approach is contextual approach, understanding sentences. So etymology, contextual sentences, whatever, we have a week to decide, because this is a larger crowd. I can totally go with exactly the flow that people are most comfortable with. So yeah, I'm going to wait for your comments for the next 7 days. And in the meanwhile, as I said, we are going to totally refer to the book that is by far considered one of the most frequently used books. In fact, I think the most commonly used book for teaching vocabulary to people, specifically those who are preparing for CAT, which means if you have already seen through this book earlier, you might still want to sit through the session one, because I am going to talk about grammar later on, but more importantly because no matter how many times you have seen through that book, or no matter how good you are with those words, if you have been following our vocab flash videos, that entire series where we give you one word a day, you might be eager to see how do I explain those words. So let's get started. This is the slide that I showed you last time, and I had said that there is a word ego, which basically is an English word as well as a Latin root. In the English word is right there at the top. The Latin root is in the center of the circle. The Latin root means I or self, but when the perception of self or the need to give importance to oneself becomes overpowering, that is when you get the English word ego, which I repeat is an exaggerated sense of self-respect and exaggerated sense of pride. Once a person gets ego, that ego is going to reflect in the way that person behaves. The way that person behaves because there are people who will show that they clearly show that they want priority, they want respect, they want to be treated as the most important person in the room. So there is something that you see in their behavior. If a person only behaves as if he puts himself over others, you call him an egoist. But if a person goes one step ahead and that person not only behaves but also talks about it, he loves bragging about it, he wants people to listen to how he appreciates himself, how he finds himself the most important person in the room. Between egoist and egotist, that is the difference. That T there is about talking. A person behaves as if he is the most important. A person talks. He also talks about why he is so very important, or why he thinks everybody should put him, his opinions, everything that is related to him, that should be put at a priority. Between an egoist and an egotist, not between actually, between after an egoist. So if I want to talk about levels of being self-obsessed, first is egoist, the next level is egotist. One, because this person is puts himself at the center, but I really don't know, he's not going to really get on your nerves. The egotist actually gets on your nerves. Then I go to the next person, egocentric. So a person who, more than talking, I mean a person who goes one step ahead, and he does not just talk about it, he now also wants you assertively, he reminds you that he is the center of everything. This person is shameless in telling people that they should ask him whenever they make important decisions. They should consider his opinions as the most intelligent, wise, the most practical, whatever. He is absolutely shameless in telling people that he is at the center of everything. That's why egocentric, from the root word that gives us centrum, which is center. So all the words, centrum is spelt with a K. It's a Greek word. So centrum gives us egocentric. These words also have their derivatives. What are derivatives? Derivatives are when I give you a word, the related verbs and nouns and adjectives basically become derivatives. So ego, no derivatives. Ego obviously gives me egoist. So egoist will give me egoism, the habit. Egotist will give me egotism, another habit. Egocentric will give me egocentrism, a third habit or a practice. The worst case is when a person is so very obsessed with himself, with making people respect him, with making people treat him on a priority basis, that that person can go beyond acceptable levels of behavior. That person can get into violence just because he wants people to sorry, to put him as at the center of things. That level of madness is what you call mania. Yes, there are a lot of other words that you get from mania. So you have egomania, madness, obsession, uncontrollable obsession with oneself. Then you have a very common word, kleptomania, which is when a person is unable to control himself or herself from stealing. Then you have pyromania, a sort of a psychiatric situation, an illness where a person cannot control himself or herself from putting things on fire, and a lot of other words. So, kleptomania, pyromania, egomania, as I said, we will deal with a lot of manias later. And by the time we reach there, as I said, I am going to like modify the way we deal with vocabulary. So, right now, till we reach that part where I actually get into manias and their origins, let's move to the next set of words. Egomaniac. Okay, one more thing. Egomaniac is for the person, egomania is the situation, an action that an egomaniac does. The adjective for such actions is egomaniacal. So ego gives me another root, alter. Alter again is an English word and it's a Latin root. As a Latin root, it means other. As an English word, it's a verb which means change or modify. That is why you have the noun alteration. So alter gives me alternate, which is, now alternate is again an adjective. It's also a verb. Alternating means when you pick Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because you skip Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that is alternating. When you pick only odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, you are alternating. When you pick only even numbers, you are again alternating. If you sorry, so in all of those cases where you pick one and skip one, you are alternating. One thing. Second thing, as I said, it is also an adjective, but in the adjective case, remember that you refer to alternate as only as the third thing. So don't confuse alternate and alternative. When you say, is there an alternate option, you are implying that you have one option, you need a third option. You don't need a second option. That technically makes the sentence grammatically incorrect, because when you have the first option, why would you want to go to the third option? I mean, it needs a larger context when you talk about alternate options. Instead, if you want to talk about alternative options, honestly, alternative options would become a redundancy, because option itself means an alternative. So alternate options, I repeat, is just it requires a much larger context. Without that context, the word alternate options is wrong. It should be alternatives, it should be other options. So alternate was a verb as well as an adjective. Alternative is an adjective as well as a noun. It simply means the other option. Alteration, I said change or modification, could be legal, it could be illegal, whatever it is. That gives you another adjective, altered. I go from alteration to altercation. Instead of using a Q for a quarrel, I have used a C. An altercation, therefore, is a sort of a heated dispute. When two people are arguing, you don't call it an altercation. When they are arguing loudly, they are arguing as if they are about to get into a fight, that is when you use the word altercation. That is why it's a heated verbal dispute. The kind of dispute when people threaten each other with severe consequences, or they use vile language, foul language, all of that becomes an altercation. Altruist, again from the same root, altruist means someone who puts the benefit or the good of others before himself or herself. Sorry. Those are altruist people. The practice is altruism. That does not mean sacrificing yourself. That simply means if you can do with less, you will not want more. Rather, you will share whatever you have spare, you will give it to the other person. That is altruism. That is an altruist. And the last category, that other side of you that you see sometimes, you see that other side sometimes because almost all of us have that other side. It's a different side of us. It's a side of our personality where we behave slightly differently. If I want to give you the example, I think that will be the example of someone who is like, what do you call it? Not someone, all of us, to be very honest. Like all of us are the same person, where in front of many people we are a different person. In front of our very, very close people we are a different person. And because we can exist as two individuals, that does not really make it a split personality disorder, don't worry. But because we can exist as two different individuals, we all have what is called an alter ego. If you have read stories, you must have heard about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you haven't read stories, if you've seen movies, if you've seen movies, which movie can I refer to? I can refer to a lot of movies. Hindi movies. Hindi movies. If you had the good luck or the bad luck to watch this movie called Houseful 3. Yes, I think Houseful 3. Yes, Houseful 3. Where Akshay Kumar has this thing of converting into Sandy every time someone uses the word Indian. That is one good example of alter egos. The kind of hidden personalities that we have, not hidden, the kind of other personalities that we have, that becomes an alter ego. So no, alter ego is not a psychiatric thing. Alter ego is just a normal psychological thing. My third root today, thanks to Norman Lewis, is the root ambi or amphi, which means both or around. So you can see the word on the left, amphibians. Where did the word originate? There were animals that we saw living on land. There were animals that we saw living in water. And we used to believe, not me, people thousands of years ago, people used to believe that those which live on land can only live on land, those which live in water can only live in water, because if you take a fish out of water, it will die. True. If you throw a dog into water, it will die. Not really true, but yeah, a lot of animals which if thrown into water are going to drown and die. So there used to be a demarcation, and then they came across animals like frogs or animals like crocodiles, which could live both on land as well as in water, and we had to give them a name. So what name would we give them? We give them the name amphibians. So fishes, if you see a fish that is alive when taken out of water, then yes, that fish is an amphibian. Otherwise, all of these little things can be amphibians. Ambience, a word that simply means everything around you. That is your ambience. It is the character and atmosphere of a place. When you talk about ambient temperature, you simply mean whichever place you are, the temperature of that place becomes ambient temperature. Amphitheater, interesting word. Where did the word originate? Theater is a place where you go to watch a show. That is the original word in Latin. Theaters were places to watch shows, but there were some shows which could not be conducted in your conventional theaters because your conventional theaters were closed. What kind of shows? Shows involving fights between gladiators or involving fight between a human being and an animal. Going ahead, they became less cruel. They started creating shows where people would participate in sports, and all of these could not be done indoors, which means what they had to do was also because when you go for a drama, you know that the people enacting the drama are facing the audience. You go for a magic show, people are facing the audience. So in many of these shows, you can have a theater because there is audience on one side and there are performers on the other side. Sports, there is no such constraint. So in sports, they created theaters, modified theaters, open air theaters, where in the center was the stage or the playground or the battleground. All around they used to make people sit, so the audience could sit all around. That is why the word was amphitheater. Ambivalent, valency is leaning. If you have a background in chemistry in school, you know that there is positive valency, there is negative valency. Positive valency means the particular atom does not there is a change in the charge and it is going to attract a negatively charged ion to become a stable compound. So valency was, I repeat, it was predilection or leaning. That valency along with the word ambi, which means both, gives you ambivalent, a person who is unable to decide who is not unable to correct, who is unable to decide between two options. He is just uncertain. That person is confused. He is not confusing. He does not give you a clear choice. He does not give you a clear answer. Another word for this is equivocal, from the root vox, which means to talk, and equi, which means equal. A person who speaks on both sides, a person who does not give you a clear answer, that was equivocal. That is the same as ambivalent. The difference between equivocal and ambivalent is one of intention. Ambivalent people are usually innocently confused. Equivocal people are usually intentionally not giving you the right answer. So you have ambivalent, one, a person who is unable to pick one. On the other hand, people become ambivalent, confused when something is ambiguous, something is confusing. So that is ambiguous, something that can be interpreted in multiple ways because there is no clear meaning attached to it. It is not written in a clear manner, that is why it is ambiguous. The next word from another Latin root, dextra. Dextra in Latin refers to the right hand. Sinistra in Latin refers to the left hand. It was a practice in Rome and some other civilizations that if a kid was left-handed, if that kid was more proficient with, if that kid was more comfortable with writing with the left hand or doing most of his things with the left hand, the parents would force that kid to give up using the left hand and instead use the right hand. That was the constraint. Kids were actually forced, they were beaten to stop using the left hand and instead use the right hand. This was because of the misconception that the left hand, what was called sinistra, belongs to. It was called sinistra because the left hand belongs to the devil in that mythology. The right hand belongs to God. So whatever evil things you do with your left hand. That is why the left hand was called sinistra. Whatever good things you do with your right hand. That is why the right hand was called dextra. Dextra gave us dexterity. They expected people to be better in doing something with their right hand than with the left hand. So because you are better at doing something, you are skilled, you are expert at doing something. The word dexterous means skilled. The dexterous gives you ambidextrous. You take skilled and you use the prefix that means both. Ambidextrous means the ability to do something with the same level of high skill with both the hands. So we have the current BCCI chairman or whatever. What is Saurav Ganguly? Something. Saurav Ganguly, people know, was a left-handed batsman and a right-handed bowler. Does it make Saurav Ganguly ambidextrous? No, because he was a left-handed batsman. He was not such a good batsman when he used to bat right-handed, if he tried to bat right-handed. He was a good right-handed bowler, but he might not have been as good a bowler with his left hand. So no, he is not ambidextrous just because he can do multiple things with both hands. Ambidextrous would be someone who can maybe sign with the same level of skill with both hands. Ambidextrous would be the very famous, the legendary Viru Sahasrabuddhe from Three Idiots, because he could write with both the hands. The character, not actual Boman Irani. So the character could write fluently with both the hands. So those are ambidextrous people. Amphibian, I've already said, people who live on both hands and water. So I'll go back to ambidextrous now. So yeah, I had dexterity, which is skill, dexterous, which is the adjective skilled. The next root is DICT, dict, to speak, which gives us a microphone, also called a dictaphone. A microphone in which you can speak becomes a dictaphone. So dict gives me so many words. How do you speak? Your pronunciation, your style of talking, where do you emphasize? Do you pause? Do you not pause? That is diction, which is why when you speak against, when you go against, when you try to disprove something, that becomes contradiction from the prefix contra, which means against. So there is a diction, there is a contradiction, there is also something called an addiction, which you don't see here. Addiction is when you have a sort of an obsession with something, which is why you talk about it a lot, that becomes an addiction. So addiction, diction, contradiction. Then I have the prefix bene, which means good. Benediction is when you speak good things about someone. Speaking good is benediction. thinking good or wishing good for someone is benevolence. And doing good, when you take one step ahead and you actually indulge in charity, you try to help out others, you move one step ahead from being benevolent to becoming a benefactor. So that root FACIS is to act or do. Benevolence has the root volus, which is to roll, so a roll or think. And third, as I said, benediction, which means to speak well about someone, to sort of give a blessing or to say good things. Appreciation, not really. Benediction is not appreciation. Rather, as I said, to wish someone good, just saying good luck or just telling someone that I am sure you will be able to do it, that can qualify as benediction. Bene is good. MALUS, malus is bad. Malediction is when someone speaks bad, wishes bad. The expression is to curse someone, that is malediction. Abusive language, no, technically not a malediction, but abusive language that includes wishing bad or telling someone that he or she will rot in hell, obviously that is malediction. The next word is from a root veil, which is goodbye. A habit inside India, not very frequent. Outside India, very frequent. The habit where the person who tops the class is asked to give a speech, what Indians call farewell speech, what Americans call commencement speech. This student representative who is chosen to give a speech on behalf of his entire class, and he or she is chosen simply because that person has the best grades or that person is the gold medalist, that person is called a valedictorian. Sorry, that kind of a speech is called a valedictorian speech. Next word, dictum. You can call it an order, you can call it something that is believed to be true even if you do not know why. That becomes a dictum. Next word, this prefix in is for not. Sufficient to insufficient makes it non-sufficient. Capable to incapable makes it not capable. Correct to incorrect makes it non-correct. Indict is the pronunciation. Indictment, indict means to blame someone, to accuse someone, to speak about someone in a way that person will not want to be spoken or talked about. That is to indict, blame, accuse, charge someone with a crime, or to call someone guilty. You haven't proven it yet, but you definitely do it. You definitely say confidently that this person is responsible or this person is to be blamed. So that is indict. And from the root word veritas, which is truth, veritas gives you a new word. So veritas is for truth. Verdict means to pronounce the truth or the final decision. One. The same veritas gives you a word verify. Everybody knows verify. To cross check. What do you cross check? You can only cross check when you cross check, when you examine, you are doing it for the sake of identifying what is original, what is not, what is genuine and what is not. So that is verify. The same verify gives you another word, veritable. People who are reliable, people who are truthful, they are called veritable. On the other hand, truthfulness or honesty from the same root is called veracity. So you have veracity, You have veracious, you have veritable. Veracious and veritable both mean something that is reliable, something that is truthful. Veritas, as I said, is all about truth, which is why verdict means to pronounce the truth. Next root, demo, dema. The Greek word here is DEMA. Everybody knows democracy. Abraham Lincoln said democracy is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. The question is, then why call it democracy? If demo means demo democracy means of the people or masses, and so then how does democracy fit with that definition? The answer is because it is the people who elect the leaders. The leaders might think that they are powerful, but the fact is the real power lies with the people. That is why democracy is rule of the people. The suffix "cracy" means rule. You have democracy, rule of the people. You have plutocracy, rule by noble people. You have aristocracy, rule by people who belong to the royal family. Then you have gerontocracy, rule by people who are older or senior citizens. So many words. And you also have bureaucracy. Bureaucracy means when those who work for the government, basically your government officers, they are the most powerful or they are the rulers, that makes it bureaucracy. From the root graphene, not GRAPHENE, this is GRAPHEIN. Graphene means to write. When you write about the population, you don't just describe the population, you use certain parameters. Those parameters, those indices put together give you the word demography, which is the study of human population both in terms of changing structures, patterns, as well as composition. So these things, how do you define patterns, how do you define compositions, these are all parameters that you use to study any population in the world. That is why those studies are called demographic studies. Epidemic. Epi is out, demo is people. Something that spreads rapidly because people go out. Something that would not spread so quickly if people simply remained inside their house. But because they go out, the disease spreads rapidly through other people. That is called an epidemic. Not the opposite, another word. Epidemic spreads rapidly. The other word that you see here, pandemic, means pan means all. So pandemic is a disease that spreads across the world or a disease that goes across borders. I was saying I have another word here, endemic, which means a disease that is native to a particular place. There are some diseases that happen very frequently in some countries or in some regions. Malaria for many years was considered endemic to India because of our conditions, because of our sanitary conditions, and because we had a very high rate of incidence of malaria. Now it is a lot under control, but malaria or yellow fever or such vector-borne diseases, they are still endemic to some areas, which means those diseases happen very frequently in those areas. Such diseases, such problems are called endemic. So if someone says the problems of insecurity or anxiety are endemic amongst today's generation, he or she is trying to say that the problems of insecurity or anxiety are very, very common in today's generation, and the problems are internalized. They don't take their anxiety and insecurity and try to infect others. Next root, Gen or genesis related to birth or origin. The genesis, the word genesis itself is a noun which means to give birth to or give rise to. That root gives me the study of genes. So then how did gene get its name? Gene got its name obviously because it was the smallest thing. It was the reason of birth of humans or animals. It is the gene is the only thing that separates living things from non-living things. That is why you have genes and you have genetics. You move out of genes, you study an entire family, the history of the family, you get genealogy. So people who try to find out who were your ancestors, where did they come from, and they try to trace your family line or family tree for somewhere around 6 or 7 or 8 generations, those are genealogists. Primarily their function is to help sociologists and anthropologists. Progeny, the one that you bring, for the one who will carry forward your generation or your name, that offspring is called a progeny. Pro is forward, genus is birth. That's why I said someone who will carry forward your generation. Genocide, from the prefix, from the suffix cidus, cidus, which means to kill. Genocide is systematically killing people of a certain race. You have heard so many examples in Africa. You heard about the example that started the Second World War and was rampant during the first half of the Second World War. The direction, the obsession of the Nazis to kill the Jews. So that was a genocide. Even as late as, if you've been following the newspapers, you must have heard of the genocide in Myanmar, that the case that refers to the Rohingya population. So all of that is genocide. I take a prefix which means mixing, I get miscegenation. Miscegenation refers to children that have parents of different races. Mixing different races, people with hybrid racial origin, all of that falls under miscegenation. Genre is a particular type, a particular subcategory. It could be music, it could be literature, it could be art. Usually genre is for something that was born from classical music or from an earlier style of music. That is why it is called genre. Indigenous, a native or someone a native or someone who belongs to a particular race that has originally inhabited a particular place. One, you also see the word indigenous in terms of manufacturing. So we say that in terms of weapons manufacturing or in terms of defense manufacturing, we are not self-sufficient yet, although we have some indigenous. So there the word indigenous means manufactured domestically, not imported. So that is indigenous. Carcinogen, from the root carcera, which means cancer. Carcinogens are agents that can cause cancer or they have been scientifically proven to cause cancer. From another root, pathos, disease. Pathogens are organisms, small or large, but organisms that will give birth to disease inside you. That is why they are called pathogens. Next is our root by. It is a root as well as a prefix. It could mean two or twice, or it could mean something that has two sides. So when you have something that is bifocal glasses are glasses that include both types of glasses. glasses for near vision, and glasses for far vision. Those are bifocals. Binary, a system of numbers where there are only two digits, 0 and 1. That is why it is called binary. Bilateral, from the word lattice, sideways, you get bilateral, just like you get multilateral. So bilateral involves two sides, multilateral involves multiple sides. Bipolar, related to psychology or psychiatry, bipolar disorders are, so poles, if you know a bit of geography, poles are the extreme ends of the earth, and that is why bipolar disorders are a set of conditions in which a person's mood fluctuates between extremes. There may be a trigger, there may not be a trigger. The most common example of bipolar disorder is a person who suffers from mania and depression, also called the depressive maniac psychosis. So that is a possibility of a bipolar condition. Bifurcate, from the root fork, which means to divide into two parts. Bifurcate itself means to divide into two parts. You have a word bi-monthly. You have a word bi-monthly, which means something that happens after every 2 months. You have a word biannual, which means something that happens after every 2 years. There's a third word in this list. It is spelt B-I-E-N-N-I-A-L, biennial. If it's a biennial thing, that means it happens twice a year, which means it happens every 6 months. Bi was both. Die is also both. How can both the words mean both? One word is a Latin word, one word is a Greek word. So die is also both, duo is also both. What kind of words does it give me? It gives me dilemma. Means you are in two minds, you are unable to decide what to do and what not to do and why. That's a dilemma for you. Dichromatic, used for people who have eyes. If you look deeply into their eyes, you realize that their eyes have two colors. That could be dichromatic. Anything that has two colors basically is dichromatic. Next, a duel. A duel is a sort of a fight or a sort of a competition between two people only, both of them on the opposite sides. Duality of something means something has two sides. So just like you had alter ego, wherein it was one person who has two different personalities, many concepts, many beliefs have a duality. And when there's a duality, it becomes very difficult for you to use that rule consistently, because that rule or that thing will have two faces. There is always a possibility that you implement it with a particular expectation or with a particular expected outcome, and it ends up doing something else. So that is duality. Duplex, whether they are apartments, whether they are bungalows, residential houses, any apartment that is divided into two sections separated by a floor, or a set of twin bungalows which is divided by a common wall, that is also a duplex. Duplicity, being deceptive, cheating someone, doing things which contradict your own actions, and the purpose of doing such things obviously is to mislead or cheat someone. That is duplicity. That is also called deception. Next root, homo, of the same type. So many words that you know from the word homo. So homo sapiens sapiens. Why are we called homo sapiens sapiens? Because sapiens is the scientific word. Homo because we look similar, because you don't just use Homo for human beings, you use Homo for other animals also. So you have Homo, which means similar. Then you have homogeneous, things which are put together and have similar characteristics. Those are called homogeneous. The exact opposite of homogeneous is heterogeneous. In heterogeneous, you rarely find similar things. Majority of the things are different from each other. Heterogeneous is also called a mixed bag. So you have homogeneous, you have heterogeneous. I was at homosexuals, those whose sexuality is oriented towards the same sex. Then homogenize, which means to make everything uniform, to give a uniform consistency to things. When you bake something, when you make a cake, you homogenize. Sorry. Otherwise also, when you are making something, often you try to homogenize whatever you are cooking, because it gives you a sort of a what do you call it, reliable sort of a dough. You don't want to end up making a mistake, so that's homogenize. Homophones, words pronounced the same way but with different meanings. So that is right and right. That example is an example of a homophone. Homonyms, words pronounced the same way but with different meaning as well as spellings. So that is an example of a homonym. Homonym comes from another root word onyma. Onyma means name. That onyma gives you antonyms, opposite meaning words, synonyms, same meaning words, homonyms, words that are pronounced the same way. Take the example of pale and pale, take the example of bear and bear, or another example of WRITE, right, and RIGST, right. All of these same pronunciation, different meanings, different spellings. Homologous, logo, study. From the root word study, you get homologous, an organ that is similar to another in shape or in terms of evolution, even if not in function. When those who study humans and animals try to find out what kind of organs are similar in terms of appearance, in terms of physical structure, those organs are called homologous, not in terms of function. So if you say that humans use legs and animals also use their legs to walk, correct. But humans use hands for many different purposes. Animals might not be able to use their front limbs for all the same purposes. So while you can compare human legs with the hind limbs of animals, you cannot compare human hands with the forelimbs, but still human hands and forelimbs of animals are homologous. Why? Because homologous is not about functional similarity, it is about structural similarity. Whatever you have two hands, animals have two forelimbs, these two are homologous. Hetero, I've already said. Dissimilar, heterogeneous, does not look similar, things that are very dissimilar. Heterosexual, where the sexuality is oriented towards the opposite sex. Heterodox, a person with unconventional, unorthodox opinions. What does the word come from? It comes from the root doxa, opinion. So then how does orthodox fit into the scheme of things? People who are very, very, ortho is straight, but here it is used in a negative sense. People who are very, very rigid in their opinions, they are inflexible, they are not prepared to listen to someone else or listen to an opinion that is different from theirs because they are very rigid. Orthodox is someone who is rigid or inflexible. Orthodox is not old. I repeat, orthodox is just inflexible. Hetero, therefore, is someone whose opinions do not agree with others or with the majority. And last, heteronyms, words that are spelt the same but have a different pronunciation. Again, you have a lot of meanings of these kind of words. I said the spelling is the same but the pronunciation changes. So that was about the vocabulary for today. When I see you next Monday with vocabulary, I am going to come up with a different approach. But if you appreciate, if you prefer that we continue with the etymological approach, I would be glad to listen to you and continue with the etymological approach. Till then, let's move to our today's concept or topic of grammar. How much do we cover in grammar today? Last time I gave you just the 8 parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. Today I go into detail about nouns. I said last time articles are not parts of speech. They are very important from the grammatical perspective, but they are not parts of speech. So I look at I look at nouns and articles today. How many nouns do you know? You know a lot of nouns. How do you know nouns? They are names. Names of what? Names of names of places, animals, and things. Anything else? Anything else that you can think of which will classify under names of blah blah blah? Right. Any name. Why do you need a name? You need a name to identify things. You need a name to give things an identity. Names, all names, common names, specified names, a boy named Rocky, all of these names, whether you can see that thing, you cannot see that thing, you can only perceive that thing, you might not even able to perceive that thing, but somebody else can perceive that thing. Everything that needs a name, you give it a noun, you give it a name. Those are nouns. And as I said, there are different types of nouns depending on the grammar reference book that you use. We have nouns which are concrete, we have nouns which are abstract. Tangible and intangible, how do I define? There are many ways of looking at this. How would I define it? I would simply say, when you give name to something for which you can define the beginning and the end, start and finish. For example, most things that you can touch, because I said most, I cannot say all, because you can touch water also. You will not put water under concrete nouns. So most things that you can touch have a beginning and an end. There are some things that you cannot touch, but they have a beginning and an end. Example, the word week, the word month, the word year, the word movie. Can you touch a week? Can you touch a month? Can you touch a year? Can you touch a day or a night? Can you touch a movie? You can't touch a movie. You can touch whatever is holding that movie. It could be the CD, it could be the I don't know, a pen drive, whatever it is, you still cannot touch the movie. But those are also concrete nouns because there is a start and an end. There is a beginning, the start and a finish, the beginning and an end. Everything else goes under abstract nouns. The kind of things that you might be able to see. You can see light. You cannot touch light. You cannot define where does light start and where does light end. Same is with a lot of other things. You talk about your feelings, you talk about your emotions, you can totally feel them, but you cannot define where do they start and where do they end. All of these are abstract nouns. Concrete nouns, you can have proper nouns, names of things, So you have mangoes. Mango is a concrete noun. It's a common noun. But when you call a mango Alfonso, you give it a particular name, it becomes a proper noun. So given names to things, given names to people, to places, to animals, all of these are proper nouns. How do I identify proper nouns on my cat? Proper nouns will always start with a capitalized letter. That's what tells you that the noun that you are looking at is a proper noun. Common nouns typically don't start with capitalized alphabets unless they are the subject of a word and are used in a most of them will be used in a plural form if there is a subject format. Not necessary. If you are going to use an abstract noun as subject, then I can go back to our lecture of our discussion of vocabulary today. And if I say egomania, egomania is not a proper noun. But if I talk about egomania and egomania comes at the beginning of the sentence, so the point was common nouns can also be used as a subject. You will know when you use a common noun as subject. Proper nouns, wherever they are, in the subject position or not in the subject position, proper nouns will always take capitalized alphabets at the beginning. The third case that is largely applicable to concrete nouns is the case of collective nouns. Collective nouns always refer to a group, a collection of nouns that are homogeneous, similar nouns. You can have a group of humans, you can have a group of children, you can have a collection of flowers, you can have a collection of keys. You do not have any collective noun if you put fruits and flowers together. So collective nouns, what is also important about collective nouns is that a collective noun always means an undefined group. When I say undefined, it means the number is not defined. Because when you use the word dozen, for many people, if I say a dozen roses, many people assume that dozen here is a collective noun. So because it's a collective noun, if it is a dozen, I should take a singular word here. Incorrect. The word dozen means 12. The word score means 20. Dozen and score, both of them are what we call names of numbers. Names of numbers are called count nouns. In a minute, I will show you a different category. That category is called countable nouns. The word that I just used is count nouns. Names of numbers are count nouns. Names of proportions, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 3/4, 1/4, 1/10, 3/5, all of these are names of proportions. Even the word twice, even the word triple, these are proportions, 2 times, 3 times. These proportions are called mass nouns. So concrete nouns. Then you come to abstract nouns, emotions, ideas, concepts, the kind of things for which you might, as I said, you might be able to feel them, you might be able to see them, but you cannot define the beginning and end of it. Those are my abstract nouns. So I gave you count nouns, names of numbers, and then there are nouns that can be counted. Nouns that can be counted therefore exist in singular and plural form. Nouns that cannot be counted cannot exist in singular and plural forms. They will largely exist in singular form only. Example, you cannot count money. You can count notes, you can count coins, you can count whatever comprises money, but you cannot count money. So money is an example of a noun that is always singular, as I said, and therefore it becomes an example of a noun that is uncountable. Everything else, things that can be counted are countable nouns. Things that cannot be counted are uncountable nouns. Articles. everyone knows that articles are those three words a, an, and the. The difference between a and an is when the word, when you pronounce the word, if the first syllable or the sound of that word starts with a vowel sound, you use an an. If it starts with a consonant sound, you use an a. I repeat, it is the pronunciation that matters, not the first alphabet. For example, when you use the word universal, universal starts with the word u. U is year. Year is not a vowel sound, it's a consonant sound. So when you say a universal appreciation, you are right. You don't write an universal appreciation. On the other hand, you obviously know of words like R, H-O-U-R, starts with an H but is pronounced A, which is a vowel sound. So R cannot be A-R, it can't be an-R. So indefinite articles a and an, definite article the or the. In the next few slides, I will show you where to use which article type. Yes, there's a lot of clutter on the slides, which is why I am going to explain everything that you see there. Where do we use indefinite articles? We use it with singularity, provided you use them only with countable nouns. Nouns that cannot be counted should not use indefinite articles. So, saying that I have a money, that is obviously wrong. You cannot have a money, you can just have money. So, singularity, as I said, countable nouns, I bought a car, correct example. Second usage, something not specific. This rule is what we use very frequently going ahead when I meet you again for rearranging jumbled sentences or helping you to understand how to identify the odd one out. I am going to revisit this rule. When you introduce something in a discussion for the first time, and if it is a common noun, in that case, the introduction, the first time you refer to it, because it is something not specific, you use the indefinite article. After that, every time you refer to it, you use the definite article. So if I say, I have a problem, the problem is too big. That sequence is what I am referring to when I say, introduce a noun with an indefinite article and then give them the definite article, so that the definite article tells you the definite article tells you that you are referring to the same thing that you used earlier. So anything not specific, you use the indefinite article. I want to go to a restaurant. If there's a particular restaurant in your mind, then you will not say I want to go to a restaurant. You will say I want to go to the restaurant. First reference, as I just said, I watched a movie yesterday. The movie was bullshit. When you use an individual noun as a representative of the whole, you use the you use the indefinite article. Example, a bird can fly. A man has needs. I think you've heard it. You've heard this and you have laughed over it. A man has needs. A boy is, what does it say? A boy is only as smart as a boy. So those cases where you use individual as the representative of the entire class, there you must, again for common nouns only, not for proper nouns, there you must use the indefinite article. All of these are examples where if you do not use the indefinite article, or if you are solving questions in exams and you realize that the sentence has a noun that is used as the representative of whole class, but it does not use the indefinite article, you will know that that sentence is incorrect. Next thing, when you refer to nationalities or the profession of an individual or the religion of a person, you again use the indefinite article. You cannot say Roy is Indian, that is wrong. You'll have to say Roy is an Indian. You cannot just say he is teacher, you'll have to say he is a teacher. And you cannot say he is he is Hindu. You have to say he is a Hindu. When you use measurement, you always use the indefinite article. I will be back in half an hour, not half hour. I bought 2.5 kilos of rice, not 2.5 kilos. Similar example, the usage of the word quite, Quite. Do not confuse this with the word that seems similar but it is not, because it is pronounced very differently. What you see in front of you is quite, Quite. The other word is Quit, and that's not quite, that is quiet. Where do I use the definite article? For most people, definite article is one thing that they abuse without realizing that they are doing it wrong. You can't just use the definite article because you feel like giving something importance. That's not how you use the article the. Something specific. Continuing from what I said in the previous example, I went to a movie last night. The movie was scary. I want to go to the restaurant that we visited last week implies there was only one restaurant where you went last week. If there were multiple restaurants, then this sentence is wrong. I want to go to the restaurant. It automatically means there was only one. Subsequent or second references, I went to a movie, the movie was splendid. अच्छा ठीक है, splendid लिखा है. I have been calling it a stupid movie. Something unique, one of its kind. Sun, moon, earth, sky, post office, teacher, park, United Nations, Reserve Bank of India, all of these will take the definite article. In fact, for a lot of countries, अभी आएगा वो आपका. Names of rivers, seas, oceans, bays, gulfs. What do you see here? You basically see geographic structures. Names of all geographic structures must take the definite article. The example is one that uses the names of multiple rivers or water bodies, and then it uses the names of multiple, what do you call it? Mountains. Names of newspapers, holy books, musical instruments, and some countries. Which countries? One example is there. Is it there? Is it not there? No, it is not there in front of you. One example is the name of the country, Netherlands, which is not Netherlands. It is the Netherlands. Lands. Netherlands is the correct word. One. Sorry. Besides that, the 5 countries where we use the definite article before when we use the acronym, even when we use the full form. So those 5 countries, the names start with a U. You have UK, United Kingdom, you have UAE, sorry. You have UK, United Kingdom, you have United States of America, USA, you have USSR, the old now defunct Soviet Republic, and then you have UAE, United Arab Emirates. All of these you take a the. In the current context, even China is called the People's Republic of China. The acronym is PRC. And when you refer to India as the Indian Republic, you again say the Indian Republic. Sorry. With ordinals. What are ordinals? I was the first person to arrive. Just like you use the he was the second person, I was the first person, that was the last case. All of these should always take the definite article. Also with superlative adjectives. Whenever you use superlative adjectives, best, worst, highest, lowest, richest, you use the definite article. See, historical monuments will take definite articles. Sardar Patel statue should take a definite article. Other statues in India, there are so many statues in India. Before certain adjectives, now this is a very interesting usage. When you say the slow and steady win the race, I know I am modifying my sentence. The sentence that you know is slow and steady wins the race. The sentence that I used was the slow and steady win the race. Reason, I have used the definite article there. How does the definite article change things? It changes everything. Usage of the definite article changes the adjective from a singular context to a plural reference. It means if you use the definite article over there, as you can see, your reference rich, oppressed, poor, blind, injured, all of these used with the definite article sorry, will refer to the people, not the person. If I sorry, if I do not use the definite article, then yes, my earlier usage, slow and steady wins the race, that usage is correct because I have not used the definite article. In that sentence, slow and steady refers to one person or one animal. But if I use the definite article, the slow and steady, it is going to become plural. An adjective that qualifies a proper noun, okay. A master blaster Sachin Tendulkar, legendary Lata Mangeshkar, the notorious, कौन notorious? विजय माल्या. विजय माल्या को notorious बोलते हैं बस. So the notorious Vijay Mallya, these kind of words. Superlative form, I've already said superlative forms of the adjectives take a singular noun when it stands as a representative of a class. The example being the tiger is a ferocious animal to imply that all tigers are ferocious. And yes, acronyms, short forms that are created short forms that are created because the long form is too boring. Acronyms are official short forms. Those are not short forms that you create because you find the long structure of the long name boring. So NATO, NASA, UNICEF, WHO, WTO, and your Niti Aayog, all of these words, they have acronyms in them. Even the IAMS. The IAMS is an acronym. So that will also take the definite article. A concept that is tested and that you should know is the zero article. That concept refers to instances where either an article is not required, which means if you whether you put the article or you don't put the article, the sentence is correct. Or instances where using an article will actually be incorrect. That is the case of zero articles. Proper nouns should never be, unless I showed you earlier, if you have an adjective that modifies a proper noun, in that case you can use the definite article, but otherwise proper nouns without an adjective should never take an article. If you use an article there, you will be wrong. Second example, abstract, uncountable and material nouns when they are used in a general sense. Saying honesty is the best policy, not saying the honesty, not required. Water is everywhere, not the water is everywhere. That would be wrong. The honesty displayed by him was commendable. Sorry. The water kept in this jar is meant for drinking. gold is an expensive metal. The gold that they bought yesterday is kept in the safe. Each of these you compare. For example, sentence number 1 and 3. What difference do you see? In the first sentence, I have honesty used in the general sense. In the third sentence, I have honesty of a specific person. That is why in the first sentence, I don't use the article. The second sentence, I do use an article. Now compare sentences 2 and 4. In the second sentence, the word has been used in a general sense, which is why there is no need of an article. But in the fourth sentence, the word water is specific. I am talking about a particular type of water or a particular reference to water. That is why in the second sentence, in the fourth sentence, sorry, I need an article. Then you compare fifth and sixth. Fifth, gold in a general sense. Sixth, any specific gold that I want to refer to. Then names of relationships, names of meals should not be used, should not be preceded by an article. When you say mother, it is fine if you don't say the mother. You can say my mother. You can also say your mother, his mother, or her mother, whosoever's mother you want to refer to. But if you don't use any of those possessive cases of pronouns, then mother wants me to see her immediately is correct. Just like you didn't have breakfast today refers to just breakfast in a general sense, not the lunch you cooked for us. Second and fourth, I am using it in a specific sense. First and third, I am using it in a general sense. So that is why in the first and third, I do not need an article. Other examples, before nouns that show the designation or position that can be held at one time by one person only. First example, who was the chairman when you worked there? Mr. Sharma was chairman. Should I write the chairman? Not required. I just write Mr. Sharma was chairman. Second, Shyam is CEO. Knowing that a company cannot have two parallel CEOs, I can just write Shyam is CEO of the company correctly. If I use the, what will it do? It will create, as I see it, it will create only awkwardness in the sentence. Samya became principal of the college. Correct, because there can be only one principal in a college. If she became principal, there is no need to add the article the. Names of institutions. Institutions such as school, colleges, universities, hospitals, these kind of institutions, when they are mentioned for their primary purpose, there again you don't use any articles. Samuel goes to church, not the church. If you say goes to church every Sunday, you are implying that he goes to the church to pray. That is where I don't need that article. But if you are just saying that he goes to a particular church and you don't want to imply that he prays at the church, then you can say Samuel goes to the church every Sunday. I went to the church to look at the architecture. You compare first and second, you realize that the purpose has changed. Similar example in the third and the fourth. In the third one, the purpose of hospital, using the word hospital in the third example is okay, because I am using it to imply why did I go to the hospital. But in the fourth one, I am giving you a purpose that is not the general purpose of going to the hospital. That is why in the fourth one, I went to the hospital to check on my friend. I am using the definite article. So 1.5 hours, just like the previous time. I am still keeping the intensity low. Starting next Monday, I am pretty sure we are going to have a lot more to do. You can ask us to increase the content of what I am covering, and I will be glad to do that. If there is any feedback that you want to give us, please give it in the comments, and we assure you to take care of the feedback. All comments, all suggestions, all appreciation, all criticism welcome. Continue studying, continue coming back. We will give you the schedule of whatever you need in the Telegram group. So please stay active. And yes, like always, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. I'll see you next week. Good night.